All right, we have gone live. Welcome to the monthly meeting of the Community Advisory Board for the Clean and Renewable Energy Action Plan. This is a wonderful meeting because we're crossing into the final run toward approval of the plan. So we want to thank everybody for being here. Remind you it is live. We appreciate the time and dedication that the group has put into this effort. We did present to the mayor and commission last night for our work session. Amy did show up. Thank you for that. And for those of you who are listening in, it was great. It was quite the experience to hear. They seemed very excited about the plan and really interested and engaged. So without any further ado, let me turn it over to South Face and I'll let y'all get started.
Great. Let me get the PowerPoint for today's meeting shared.
And for roll call, y'all tell me Amy's here with W&A. It looks like Charlie is here for Athens Land Trust. I'm sorry, for Athens Housing. John is here for JOMA, and Tom's here for Green Building. So that's who's present at the moment.
That is a fast and easy roll call. Thank you. Can everyone see my screen? And
you're good.
Perfect. So today's meeting, I think, is going to be relatively simple, and we're mostly going to be focusing on the public input period. So I don't know if you were able to, listen in last night or not, but basically we'll be going over the presentation that we'll be giving at these public listening sessions, which is basically the same as the presentation that we gave to the mayor and commission last night. And then as well, going over the public engagement plan and any updates that have been made to it since May. Pretty simple.
Maria, before we go any further, can I ask a quick question? I know Amy made it last night. Charlie, did you, John, or Tom, were y'all able to see or watch in on the web to see the meeting?
Sorry, I was not.
Okay.
I saw it after the fact on the YouTube thing.
And Tom, did you see it, or I guess you were coming in from Germany?
I did not. I'm still like sorting out life right now.
That's okay. That's helpful because then we know how fast to go or slow to go through the presentation. So we wanted to share with you what we presented last night. So go ahead, Maria. Thank you.
My WebEx knowledge. Okay, so this is the presentation. We gave you an early version of it in May, and then got suggestions from the CAB, from the mayor's office, the city planner's office, and this is kind of the final culmination that was given last night. So we can just go through it, and if y'all have any comments, thoughts, because this will be given basically to any public member that comes to any of the public events that we'll be holding. It'll also be available to them. I don't know.
The thing we did last night, we sort of abbreviated because the commission had been kept up to date. We sort of abbreviated some of the initial slides or the talking points on the initial slides, but for the actual community engagement sessions, we're going to have virtual and in person, we'll do sort of the long form of that. We were limited last night to 10 minutes roughly. I think they gave us a little more than that initial presentation time, but for the actual sessions that we have with the community, we will be doing the long version of this.
Yeah.
Can I just say that I don't quite understand this slide, like when it says purpose, like purpose of what? I have to admit that this slide confused me.
Yeah, so
we might want to take this out, Robert, when we go.
Yeah, I was going to say that we probably will take this out for the actual public presentation slide.
Okay.
This was really meant to, have the formal request to the commission. And so we might, reword this, that this is the formal presentation of the plan to the community and their opportunity to have comment.
Gotcha.
So this was the outline for what we're going to cover in last night as we went down the list. So they would have a framework, an agenda for what we were presenting to them.
Robert, you kind of want to give the general overview.
So the clean and renewable energy plan is really defining what we're planning in this case, and that we really work on the basic, the things you anticipate normally, around clean energy being solar, wind, and hydropower, but that energy efficiency is actually your biggest opportunity for clean and renewable energy, so that money or a kilowatt not consumed is a kilowatt that doesn't need to be generated, and so efficiency is really the biggest opportunity. And then renewable energy credits is a market system for delivering things like solar and wind and other renewable energy that can be purchased on an existing market system. And then energy storage is added because that really helps sort of offset the imbalance that can be created from some of your renewable energy sources.
Can I just make one, for some reason, and it may just be my brain, but energy efficiency, it took me the longest time to not be confused by that because I was so used to things like solar power, things that were like actively. So I wonder if it would be helpful to say increased energy efficiency, or at least reference that when we talk about energy efficiency as one of the things that are included. It's not like we're doing, I mean, it could be all kinds of things, obviously, but I just think, because like I said, for some reason, it just took me the longest time to not be confused by that. So maybe other people will otherwise be confused.
Yeah. And I think really the idea here is the energy efficient investments, right? That's the thing that people, people think about energy efficiency sort of on their own
Right.
personal sort of status of adjusting the thermostat or putting insulation in their attic. But it really is these investments into the community that we'll need to clarify.
And I think just a sentence or two that just kind of, or say energy efficiency investments and then just expand and saying, what we mean by this is for us to actually, that's obviously and you talk about that a little bit later. I think that's a big issue in terms of the lower income and equity. So.
Yeah, and really talking about that these are programs, right? So that we'll have later, you'll see the pathways, and that those become programs. And one of those in particular is a program called weatherization, in which seniors and low-income households receive energy efficiency upgrades to their houses. And so it's explaining a little bit about that, and then saving a little more detailed explanation for later. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And so here we'll go a little bit longer. The commission had seen this before, but we'll talk about that this for residents who haven't perhaps seen the entirety of this and who may not know that the mayor and commission adopted a 100% resolution, and that calls for 100% renewable energy, clean renewable energy for the community and for municipal operations. We'll go into some details about that, but that got passed in May of 2019. And then within the SPLOST 2020, there is a substantial amount set aside for energy efficiency upgrades for facilities. And so that was another big step. And then a community energy fund was established. This is a fund from which energy efficiency and renewable energy investments is made. It will be ongoingly funded by franchise fees paid to the city by the utility. For those of you who know the details about what's called the Territorial Act, the municipalities get the option to choose their energy provider, and fees get paid accordingly for those franchise efforts. A lot of cities actually have their own utility, LaGrange and is one that I know of personally, and Conyers and some other cities have their own utility, and they get to provide those utilities. Athens-Clarke County is served primarily by Georgia Power, but also by Walton EMC, I believe, if I'm correct about that.
And Jackson and Rail.
Jackson, right? And so thank you for that.
Jackson, yeah.
And so parts of those, each of those utilities pay franchise fees to the city, and the Community Energy Fund would be funded by that, by those, potentially by portions of those franchise fees paid. Those fund would loan out for projects, and the money saved from those projects gets put back into the fund, and it goes into a circular sort of the fund gets replenished over time. So that's how a big step that was taken in March of 2020. And then the big thing we're talking about tonight is or today or whenever it may be, the big thing we're talking about is the Clean and Renewable Energy Action Plan that has been developed, that was started in earnest in March of 2020, kicked off even earlier, and for which all of you here today have participated. But that if there's no one who was, if there's someone new, then we're going to talk about the engagement process and how the rest of the plan came around. And this is your opportunity to give input directly to the commission on the adoption of this plan. We'll go to the next slide. And again, for community members who have not been in part of the process, the planning process itself was encompassed establishing a baseline. GreenLink Analytics pulled in a wide variety of information using their ACES model, Advanced Clean Energy Scenario Model, and they analyzed 3 pathways: a business as usual pathway, a maximum cost-effective pathway, and a maximum investment pathway. And we use those to sort of help drive some of the decision-making in the process. That analysis is available, and details of that are sort of in the plan. The results of the details are in the plan. And then the putting in the pieces in place really ran from June to December of 2020. In which we began the CAB meetings and started the education series and sort of ran a lot of the community education components through the CAB process. And then the community engagement process, January to June of 2021, 3 stakeholder charrettes, 5 community town halls, which are mainly education sessions, a big community survey, and then one-on-ones and other listening sessions. I think the number was 52 or 59 listening sessions that occurred during that process. We took all that information and went around about it a bit, did some additional analysis with an equity lens and an economic development lens, and have completed the plan that you see before you. And then we have a targeted adoption date of August 1st by the commission. And we've got some other, again, this is your opportunity to give comments directly to the commission for their consideration before they adopt the plan. So the next slide sort of details the goals of the Athens Clean Energy resolution. The 2035 goal is 100% of the electricity for municipal properties and government operations converted to clean and renewable energy by 2035, and then 2050, the entirety of the community electricity demand with 100% clean and renewable electricity. There's some details underneath each one of these if you want to sort of see the details, but for the general purposes is that the government operations is clean and renewable by 2035, and then we figure out how to get all of the community converted over to clean and renewable by 2050.
Can I just wonder if I know at least last night, and I can't remember if it was part of the presentation or if it was part of a response to a question later, but I wonder if at this point it might be worth saying a little bit about what does that mean 100%? You know, and is it in reality going to be 100%? I mean, I know it says a goal, but, and you don't necessarily have to go on very long, but just maybe a little bit of conditioning to those goals might be helpful and might also put other things in perspective later on. So just a thought.
Good thought. So something along the lines of, the big framework that we put around this is that what that means, what clean and renewable energy means for this means that you invest as much as you can in sort of effective operations, reducing your overall demand as much as you can. You make energy efficiency improvements over time, and then you also then begin looking at building upgrades to reduce the energy demand. And then once you sort of get to that final point, you start looking at what your overall demand is for a particular building or a particular piece of the community. And you then look at how much energy you have left that needs to be provided by clean and renewable. And so generally speaking, for Georgia, that's solar. But then if you're somewhere short of that, then you've got renewable energy credits that you can buy, which will then help fund investments into a clean energy generation. And this sort of also, these goals also include the transportation sector. So that includes sort of electrification of much of the fleet, as well as conversion over time to solar powering those fleets through the investments in the electricity grid. So once that's transportation is fully effective, you're making investments as well as trying to reduce the vehicle miles traveled, as well as trying to make more efficient the transportation in the region generally as well. So that's generally what the 100% means. That's sort of get where you get going, Amy.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, I think I might consider kind of separating the 2035 from the 2050 in terms of talking about them, because to me, the 2035, I mean, you know, how we do it when we're talking about government, we have so much more control over that. And I think, you know, you can talk about that pretty cleanly, so to speak, in terms of how we're going to get there, but then make the point that for the community as a whole, you know, it's kind of common sense, but yeah, of course, that's going to be much more difficult, you know, because you just have such a variety of socioeconomic and there's a lot more challenges, but but what as a government in setting this goal, what the government can do, what we can do is by, you know, and then maybe, but I think separating them would be helpful to give people a sense of well, 2035, hey, you know, we might get close to 100%, you know, but 2050, that's a great goal, and we're going to do everything we can to do that and to help individuals as well as provide the infrastructure to make that possible, but it's obviously much more challenging.
Yeah, and the programs that are in place.
Yeah,
I like that a lot because then we can focus, especially on that 2050, that what government primarily does is provide facilitation, builds partnerships, encourages. There's some things that the government has levers on, like building standards, energy efficiency standards. There's some things they can do to regulate, but a lot of it is really educate and communicate and build partnerships, collaborate. Well, the 3 C's. So I think that's a great division when we're talking to the public between those two.
Definitely. Getting a better note-taking spot here. Okay. So let's go to the next slide. And so getting there, one of the reasons to get there is the sort of community equity benefits. One of the things that the analysis of the energy usage included was the analysis of the energy burden and the effect that has on traditionally marginalized communities. And in particular, the energy burden is more severe in the darker purple areas here you see on this map, and traditionally the energy burden affects low-income households in particular. Traditionally marginalized in communities feel it more severely simply because of the, or mainly because of the lower incomes, but also because there's housing. Their housing often is substandard and uses a lot of energy, and they often have less opportunities, less places they can live, and end up with a larger transportation burden as well. So, in generally speaking, on the national average, energy burden is considered high at 6% on an average. We are looking median and average here, but the median Clarke County energy burden is 7.1%. So there is a large component, a large contingent in the county that is energy burdened, and in investments in clean and renewable energy will have, if done properly, will have equity benefits throughout the community. And examples include that weatherization program that I talked about at the beginning, where housing is able to be brought to a higher efficiency standard, thus lowering it, as well as the sort of job benefits. And we'll talk about some of those in detail here in a minute. So the community engagement that occurred as part of this, the community advisory board that came together often and had dozens and dozens of, we may have gotten to 100 meetings, but maybe I don't think we got quite that high. But we also had 59 listening sessions that were focused on companies and organizations that had opportunities to and thoughts in the realm. And we had 5 town halls that were mainly focused on sort of an educational opportunities to sort of bring community members along around the issues that are important to the Athens-Clarke County community and why clean and renewable energy is important. And then we held 3 charrettes, which really dove deep on community and equity and the clean energy economy, the economic development aspects of clean and renewable energy, and the intersection of the built and natural environments, which we definitely heard from the commission on last night, the importance of wherever there is the opportunity to connect the environment to the clean renewable energy, we needed to do that as well, and that we had a particular charrette on that, and that's manifest in the plan throughout. So that's a big overview of the engagement. Here's a slide that's not meant to be read, but it does. Hopefully, you'll recognize some of the organizations that participated in the listening sessions as well as the other planning processes along the way. And so we'll just continue on. It's not really meant to be an exhaustive list, but to be representative of the depth of community engagement that occurred in development of this plan. So we'll go to the next slide. And then assembling the plan itself, the actual plan contains multiple dozens of pathways for a clean energy and clean renewable energy future. These pathways are things, everything from the things that we've mentioned about solar power investments and energy efficiency programs and weatherization programs and the like. And so, but they are very specific things that communities have done around the nation, if not the world. They sort of all are characterized in a variety of ways. Some of them are, completely within the control of the Athens unified government, and many of them are simply, things that can be encouraged through education. And so there's a wide variety of these pathways, and Greenlink has done an amazing job sort of documenting them and modeling the positive effects they will have on the energy consumption and energy generation in the Athens-Clarke County unified government area. And so we took a wide variety of those, did a lot of education on those pathways, but there's so many of them that we only could go so deep. But then we hopefully got enough information that we wanted to rank those so that we would give the community a sort of a tiering of the importance of them. And then, of course, took them through an equity lens to ensure that only the ones that had the most positive, if not neutral, benefit were included in those top tiers. And we grouped them into big picture themes so that the Sustainability Office can talk about these and their approach to the uh, implementation of these, conversion of these pathways to programs, and they could then sort of build the support in the community for these things going forward. So another slide that is really not meant to be read is this next one, in which we sort of give an example. This is just a sample of the top clean energy tiers. And so, for example, the energy storage bulk purchasing is one of the ones in the buildings and energy category. And for example, that's a bulk purchasing reduces the cost, and so if the county were to be buying a large amount of energy storage through some grant or some other money allocation, they could build a program to make that pricing available to the larger community, and by doing so, establish a way that you can store energy in a way that then allows more clean and renewable energy to be utilized for a good portion of your energy demand, and sort of offsetting that demand to when the energy is available in the clean and renewable, and offsetting the dirty generation. Just an example of one of the pathways that would be converted into a program as we move forward. But these, as an example, these tierings, this is a tier 1, and you can see the equity score. And so the process we use in that, you can to arrive at this was on the next slide.
And speaking of that, it seems to me it would make sense to have this slide first, or at least have the slide twice even. But I think it would make it, because I think it's good, actually, Robert, for you to go through. I mean, I would even suggest you might want to talk a little bit about a pathway from each of those categories to give people a little more time to kind of absorb what this really means, and what the, because I think last night, the commission asking about, well, where's the policy and that sort of thing. And I think, just kind of give people a little chance to absorb, and also to see, well, oh, I get why that's under community. I get why that's under this. I get why it's been, but I think we should have this slide first, because then you can talk about how that thing got a score of 1 in equity, because I think that's obviously really important. And I think that's something we kind of added, is like, we really want to be sure we don't lose sight of that. So I don't know, I would put this slide before we show the other one personally. I don't know if other people have the same impression or not, but.
I like the idea of actually, what we might do is, I think, leave the tier slide where it is, and not talk about sort of the details of a particular example. Talk about the tiering process, and then come back to the list and talk about a detail of how they might be transformed into a program. And that way people can understand what we're tiering before we start talking about how we're tiering it.
Okay.
So let's do it that way. So it'll just be, here's an example of a list. And then we talk about the tiering process, and then we get into, we duplicate that slide again, and we talk about the some examples of samples of how they would move from a pathway to a program.
Okay, cool.
Another good. These things always get better with
age, right?
Multiple reviews, right? All right, so we will have talked about the tiers, sort of giving examples of they're broken into these categories. We do an equity review, or I won't talk about that yet, but as these are multiple pathways, we tiered them on the categories of most urgent for success, things that take a very long time to have a positive impact, and survived the equity review lens, in which they were either neutral or positive for equity benefits. And then perhaps the tier 2 were opportunities that, while helpful and could be undertaken, would be really only funded as perhaps funding became available, or partnerships became available, or the federal administration perhaps makes funds available. And so those would be opportunistic priorities that we would move up into a program as they present themselves. And then tier 3 are things that are good ideas, but maybe the regulatory environment or the time frame environment make them difficult to do. So that's how we tiered those projects and ran them through an equity lens. And then we would come back to the slide. I would give that sort of example maybe of each from each of the categories and how each of the particular sample pathway would become a program.
And, to Amy's point, that really does make it click in my brain too, as far as that description of we're moving from pathway to program is really helpful in describing it. I really appreciate and being able to see like a clear connection between that pathway and a couple of steps, and then you talk about what that program looks like. I think really will help people understand the difference, because last night they kept wanting to kind of get to the program, which I understand. I mean, we all want to be there, and it makes sense that that's the detail level we want to jump to, but we have a long way to go to get to that. So helping, I just want to re-emphasize that, Amy, I think that, and Robert, that description is also fantastic. So that's been very helpful.
And I'll pick a couple of lectures from that list and do a similar thing for the community.
Thank you.
Should let them visualize that. I want to make sure I didn't miss. I saw a comment pop up, but I didn't necessarily. Was it something we needed to address right away?
I think it was the Green Building Council was not on that list of something. I saw.
Yeah, there was a slide back earlier. It's not a big deal, but it didn't see our organization on that list of people that were working on it. And we've
Gotcha.
been,
yeah. So that's it's always good to we meant that as a representative sample, but I agree that having that organization, we're likely going to have people from the community, and so seeing that up there would be a good idea.
Yeah, so you're talking about the representative list, not the, and for the public, what we should also add, because there's not the 10-minute restriction, which we did, I'll confess, we did some cutting. We should also put up all the CAB members and their logos, their representatives at the front end of this, and a special thank you to the CAB, because each of you guys really did show up and put a lot of time into it. So I think we can get that. We should get that in there too. I thanked everybody, but when you only have 10 minutes for a plan this big, we were kind of scrambling. For those of you in the engineering and construction, we call that value engineering, right? Is that okay? I'm kidding. That's
a dirty word.
That really is. It's dirty on the client side too. I tell you, whenever they tell me that, I just cringe.
All right, so we'll have explained a good chunk of the sort of how the pathways move to programs, and then we'll talk about the sort of grouping these action items into big picture themes, and so that the real purpose of this is so that the Sustainability Office and commissioners and people who know about this and are participating in this clean renewable energy transition can sort of speak to the sort of these big themes, and so people can understand how things sort of flow up underneath this. And so the number one being that leading by example is tremendously important. It's terribly difficult to bring a community along on a journey as big and as involved as this without leading by example. And the great part about this is it's good government. Government buildings are owned for 50 plus years, if not more in most cases. Athens City Hall, gorgeous building, is at least 100 years old, isn't it? And so making those investments into that building, and you get the payback when you get to the zero energy state. And so that's the good thing. So that's the leading by example. Heard very clearly from stakeholders and the CAB members that the building community through investment was the first way to go on this. That while we could easily buy enough energy off of the grid and make investments in other communities just with enough money, but that would not necessarily help the local community. And so the building community through investment, and we use that as a prioritization tool. And then being part of the larger solution is the acknowledgement that the current plans filed by local utilities do not get us to the goals that we're looking for. It would be very easy if the utilities had said that they, by 2035, that they're going to have completely converted their generation to clean renewable energy sources, but they will not. They have not filed plans to do that. So the process which the public input is taken is called the Integrated Resource Plan, and intervention in that plan in this case involves Athens and other like-minded communities, Athens-Clarke County and other like-minded communities who have joined together and have a nice big voice that the Public Service Commission will likely listen to more readily than if it was just one community. So we're excited about that, but that's just a piece of it. This is just the first year of that. This is every 3-year process, and new programs get launched inside of that. New utility programs get launched inside of that, and so this is just the first step, and it's an important one for Athens-Clarke County and these other like-minded cities. And then, as we were talking, that they have not, the utility has not filed plans to be clean and have clean renewable energy 100% by the goals of Athens-Clarke County, and so the possibility to close whatever gap that is still being generated by after analysis that is still being generated by dirty fuel sources can be offset using an existing market called the Renewable Energy Credit Market. This is where a buyer who's wanting to create enough generation to offset their carbon-based fuels can go and buy credits that then drive investments in clean renewable energy. The important thing here that came out of the stakeholder process was that needed to be local first. That whatever as we get to those days when we're analyzing how close we are to meeting the complete transition to clean and renewable energy, that those investments, that those RECs, as they're called, get used locally first before they start going out into the national market.
Could you give an example of what that would be?
Sure. And if you think, as I was saying, I was thinking how important it might be to explain. So what has happened, an example of one that would be now, if you went out and you were looking to buy a renewable energy credit now, you would go into the market and they are priced by the kilowatt or megawatt, and it is the cost, effectively the cost difference between what a renewable energy project, for example, a windmill in the Midwest, cost to install, and their ability to put that, whatever you're paying for your kilowatt hours in your community, that difference is that cost. And they will take that money and help build that project and put that renewable energy onto the grid that theoretically offsets the generation necessary in other parts of the grid. Reality is that we mainly are consuming them locally. That's the importance of them being local. But ultimately, this is a little bit of that sort of question about globalization. Where you generate, if you can generate energy in the Midwest and it can offset all of the Midwest energy, the entirety of the North, the vast majority of the energy in the Northwest, is hydropower. And so they are, most buildings over there are completely carbon free because it's hydropower. And so, we are a little bit more problematic here. We've got some good hydro, got good abundant solar. And that's sort of an example of what it would likely be used to drive here would be a local solar investment that gets onto the grid. The problem we have is the transition is the transmission of that energy. We can't send it out on the utilities lines, and so the renewable credits would go mainly into offsetting the energy of some larger building who can put them on their roof and use it locally, and therefore those credits then offset that generation necessary, and then reduces the overall consumption in the region.
So we-
Amy, one thing that was coming out of the IRP that was really poignant to me is that the land and availability of space is in South Georgia, and that's where you see them invest in these very large solar farms like John was mentioning he saw coming back from Florida. So they're building these in South Georgia. The consumption is high in North Georgia, so there's a sink. So source is south, sink in north. And now they're talking about having to build gigantic transmission lines, significant increase in significant transmission lines to get it from one place to the other. And so one of the questions that we started as local governments asking is, are we missing opportunities to generate it locally to offset that need to transmit that vast difference with all the loss in electricity that goes with it? So you look at the flat roofs that are available, say a lot of these very large industries. Is there a deal that could be struck with a large industry, for example, where they are actually producing far more power than what they're consuming in their plant? They get some kind of revenue or incentive, financial incentive to participate in this program, and it helps also create, not only offsets their costs, but helps generate local energy locally that can offset the need for transmission line from South Georgia.
Well, aren't building those transmission lines, I mean, from permitting to acquisition of, I mean, that must be an incredibly lengthy and costly process. If you take half of that investment and put it into doing solar, I mean, we could do it in a third of the time, if not less, of what it would take to get those transmission lines built.
Agreed, but if you go sit in on the IRP hearings, Georgia Power is very much pushing the transmission lines, which at their scale, I can see why they, and also with shareholders, can make a lot of sense. But my really, it's a kind of an anathema to me to have us buy power from elsewhere when we have these opportunities we haven't explored locally that can benefit the industries and the businesses and the community and offset those kind of environmental costs that go with it. So I don't know I don't know the clear, I don't know the clear way to get there yet, and I'd love to maybe Tom, maybe you, Amy, or John, or y'all might have some ideas, Charlie, on how you could put together that kind of deal in a way that would attract an industry and make them interested in becoming essentially a power provider, or either through that. I mean, you can't do that legally in Georgia. You have to do it as a SEPA, but that type of approach where there's a mutual benefit across the board for the participation. And we just have the concept based on the need, and now we just have to figure out, and what is it, always the devil's in the details.
Yeah, and we really are limited by the Territorial Act, which basically prohibits you from putting your extra energy out onto the web for somebody else to buy. And so the credits, the credit, whoever might be willing to pay for the credit is really going to have to work out a program where it just offsets a particular location's use, and just do enough of that it reduces the overall demand, that you're not really bringing in any of the dirty power. But hopefully what will happen is as we get further along in this and we get to things like net metering and some other things like that, we end up with the ability to do effectively all of that. And those are regulatory changes. That's like an example of a tier 3 change that ultimately gets us there hopefully at the end when we get closer to our goal times.
Yeah, I mean, this is Tom. Like you mentioned the net metering, that is part of, I think, what's going on with the IRP discussions right now. And it depends on what comes out of that. Georgia Power agreed to reluctantly have a net metering program, what, 3 years ago now, I guess it was.
2019, yeah.
Yeah, and I participated in that, thankfully. But if that were open up, and I know a couple of the commissioners are pushing hard for that, I don't know how it's going to play out. But it's kind of it's a little late for us to have much influence on that. It's sort of out of our control right now.
Depending on what the commissioners say, but yeah, it didn't look like anything like that was going to be coming back up this time around. It really is a little frustrating that that we got this solution before us, and Georgia Power is so scared of it that they sort of avoid it. But I always ask people, Tom, what rate did you end up getting?
I'm on the monthly net metering, and in the month of April, I was within 1 kWh of being zero, and the month of May, I was net positive. So my bill, I think, estimated bill is like $9 for May, and it was $14 for April or something like that.
Gotcha.
Wow.
So they basically pay you the same that you pay.
Yeah,
so you got 100%.
My meter on the house it's a two-way, so it measures what we take in and measures what we send out in the excess. I'm sure right now I'm sending out excess, and we just pay the difference, and it doesn't even count for what's being generated, what I'm using in the house right now. That part is sort of, I have to figure that out later on. I keep track of, I've been an engineer, I keep track of it all. So
Sure. All right, so we'll jump back here. So we're talking about closing the gap, renewable energy credits. So we'll do probably a shorter explanation of that, Amy. I think it'd be appropriate for the community, but I think you're right that having an explanation of what is a renewable energy credit is an important thing. Assuming that not everyone's going to have sort of the depth of knowledge on that. But then, building a workforce. And so one thing I tell about this is that if you can imagine that every kilowatt that you generate, or every kilowatt that you consume in your home, about half of that goes out for the fuel that creates the generation. And that's mainly going to coal and gas and nuclear in this case. And all of that fuel comes from out of the community. And so if you imagine that we move all of that generation, or offsetting, all the efforts to offset through energy efficiency investments, and we sort of keep all that component of the fuel costs sort of within the community, that is a big economic development opportunity. And the workforce is necessary for that, both for clean and renewable energy generation as well as energy efficiency investments. That workforce is really would benefit the traditionally marginalized communities in that they would have the opportunity to have more efficient homes, and the work opportunities are mainly in construction and the like there. And so those opportunities are would help really generate a real revolution for traditionally marginalized communities with by bringing all that money back into the community. Mm-hmm. And then finally, the community education and engagement was brought into the discussion as a big picture theme by the Community Advisory Board. And that was a very clear sort of category of pathway in which all of the pathways have this lens in which the members of the community who will be hopefully positively affected by this become part of the planning and development of the programs. And so, and we bring along the community members who do not have much understanding of the current complexity of the issues, and that we have a whole sort of series of pathways that are brought to educate and engage the community as we move these pathways to programs for the community's benefit. So that's the big picture themes that sort of we talk about, and we'll be continuing to talk about as these programs or these pathways transition into programs, and we try to help capture the imagination of community members as they hear about this going into the future. And so the next steps, in this case, will be the steps we're taking, which are the things you'll see on the next slide here of the engagement. So we will, whichever one of these are in at the moment, a virtual public meeting on Friday, and a June 23rd in-person public meeting at the Athens Regional Library. We're going to add an additional virtual meeting in July, if I remember correctly. The 22nd was the date, Maria?
The 12th, July 12th virtual meeting.
That's right. 22nd was the deadline for getting those things together. So July 12th, and then and the Sustainability Office is going to be having multiple appearances. And sort of it's like the tour. We should call it a big tour, shouldn't we, Mike? You and Aaron and Jennifer are going to be going out into the community, and this is where we're asking for additional help from the members of the CAB, as well as any of your constituents. So I'm going to turn it over to Aaron here in a second and let him sort of talk a little bit about where the tour is going to be out in the community.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. So I sent out an email earlier today with a list. I can share that if you'd like.
Please.
If I can find it. Is that it? Can you see that?
A little bit bigger.
Can you make it bigger?
So Saturday, the 18th is a big one. We have Juneteenth happening at West Broad and the Juneteenth celebration. Jen and I are going to be at the West Broad Farmers Market from 11 to 2. And then we have to be set up by 3:45 for the Juneteenth. So we're tabling that event as well. And that goes to 9. We don't have anybody at Bishop Park right now, but we do have the opportunity to table at that event. So if anybody is interested, and for all of these, and for anything else, if you guys are going out to a different event that's not listed, and you need the flyers with the QR code, we could provide that to you. We have extra copies of the plan printed, so if you want to bring that along as well, we have those. So Saturday's a big day. Then the next week, Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll be at Charm from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then from 4 to 6. And I know it's going to be extremely hot on all these days, but another good reason to talk about energy. Thursday, we're at the Athens Regional. That's led by South Face, but we will be there in support. And then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is AthFest. We didn't get a table for AthFest because it's $550 for a table. But we are trying to piggyback on another ACC department. We've made some calls. If not, we're just going to be walking around, handing out the flyers, getting people to get that QR code in their phone and just talking about the plan with anybody we could talk to. Saturday, again, it's West Broad Farmers Market and then Bishop Park Farmers Market. So that's what we have lined up. We've talked to everybody from these organizations and we're allowed to do this. So
Aaron, I need to remove the one for Saturday the 25th, the West Broad Farmers Market. They typically have opportunities when they have special events. So they don't follow the same guidelines as Bishop Park. So there isn't an opportunity on that particular day, but there is one in July. They have certain events each month that they can feature people from outside their farmers market circle, and you can register for those. So if that's something we want to do in July, we can do that. But we only have registered for the one in June for Juneteenth.
Okay, thanks. But yeah, any help we can get from you all would be great. Guess they're checking the fire alarms. But yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
I'm Mike. I need to leave because I got some contractors show up at my house right now. I got some renovation going on, but let me know what about the Bishop Park one. I could be able to do that or just help out on Saturday. But I don't have the capability like a table. What do we got? I mean, I could maybe help out there, but I do need to leave right now because I need to go talk to my contractor. So can you send me a note about that and we can maybe work out something for Saturday? The week after that, yeah, it's Joma showing up, Joma showing up with the chat. So,
Thank you too. And if people just want to hand out and not, spend time somewhere, if you have mailboxes or things you want to put it in or include it in stuff you're sending out to folks, there's that opportunity there. We can send it electronically or bring you paper. So just let us know what you have or what you need.
Yeah, I can't do the
Thank you.
25th because I'm in Toronto, but I can possibly do this Saturday. So
You can
anyway,
head down to
I gotta
Toronto
go.
and see what they say.
All right, I gotta go. Cheers.
Thank you, Tom.
That is the sort of overall presentation and the current things. Aaron, I think you said that was all we had, and Jennifer, you sort of modified what was out there where the sustainability office tour is going to be held. So I think that was this is the content we're going to be delivering wherever we can. But the main purpose of this all is to for people to have fill out a little card. We're going to have some manual cards at the in-person event, but we'll also mainly have a virtual card that people have, and we'll collect those, categorize them, and put them into an addendum to the plan for the commission's consideration.
And Robert, can you put up the presentation one more time and go to that page that has the link to our web page on it for folks, or we can drop that link in the chat. So that's another way to send the information out if you have contacts yourself and you're willing to share or have an opportunity to share. We have a link that takes you to our webpage, and it has the plan, a condensed summary, executive. It has the feedback form on it. It's going to have a copy of the presentation of the mayor and commission. Maria, if we can get, I don't know if y'all can do this, but on June 17th, when we do the virtual meeting and do the presentation, if we can get a copy of that recording and get that up on the web as well, because it's going to be a more expanded version. We'll just label it as expanded presentation. And so pick which one you like the best, and we can get that up as well so people can review that. So there's the link. It's pretty simple to get there, so we'd love it if people will share that out.
I forget, do you all have, is there a Facebook, could there be a Facebook post that then we could share?
We can ask, we don't have what, sustainability doesn't have a Facebook, but
Okay.
I think PIO has I think Athens-Clarke County has a Facebook.
I know it seems like back when Maggie was around, there was something about, seemed like sometimes things were put on Facebook. I can't remember, but if there was a Facebook post, I'd certainly share it.
And I can't remember whether it was, yeah, I'll have to check because Maggie was our guru of media.
Yeah, we do as a sustainability office have a Facebook. We just have a bunch of older people working here.
A little ageist right there.
I'm talking about myself mostly. I don't use
What you
Facebook.
saying there, Aaron? I love it.
I know. Well, Betty White said that it was I don't know if she was a big fan either, so I'll go with her. But it's true, we should get it out to someone, or maybe we can check with a younger generation on getting it out for us.
Part of it is I don't think we have access, Aaron, at this point because you have to have permissions. So we just got to reach out to PO. They have to give us access to our own Facebook.
Well, just let us know if that gets up. I mean, I know I've got a neighborhood listserv, so I can certainly put out, the website address and information to the listserv.
Thank you.
So that's the presentation that will be made and the outreach efforts to secure the comments, and we're all looking forward to on August 1st. Could be that it gets pushed off, but I think that I think that the extra effort we're going to be making on engagement will be sufficient for the commission, unless there's a giant uproar in Athens-Clarke County that clean energy is not what they want. I think we'll end up with an adoption on August 1st, and we'll be off to the races.
Woohoo.
All righty.
Go back to the CAB agenda.
So one other thing, if you have some changes that need to be made that you want to recommend to the plan, this is kind of it. This is the last hurrah, so to speak. We did notice one thing, Robert, page 14. The picture on page 14 is Piedmont Park and not Athens. So may want to swap that out. All the others, I believe, are Athens-Clarke County. And if you need a specific look, let us know. I'm sure among all of us, we've got photos that we can suggest or send over your way. That one got past me when I was looking at the early versions. Aaron caught that one. He said, I think this is Piedmont. So,
It's such a beautiful park. I mean, you know, Olmsted,
it is.
Olmsted, right?
God,
He was the first green infrastructure guy.
I know, but Atlanta just wants to, they want to be Athens.
I swear to God, if Piedmont Park and the High Museum were in Athens, I'd be there.
Hey, we got Sandy Creek Park.
Yes, for sure enough. Fair enough. I guess I need the airport too. So sorry that we're gonna.
We have one of those too. It's not Hartsfield, thank goodness.
There isn't anything that is Hartsfield. It is its own beast.
All righty. Is there anything else that people have or any other comments, thoughts, suggestions?
Public engagement.
All righty. What's next on our agenda? Is that it?
I think really the big thing was we were making sure that the CAB members who were here, and if you have any other connections to CAB members who perhaps participated but weren't able to come here at the end, the appreciation that we wanted to express from the consultant's point of view, and the sustainability office I know shares this sentiment that this was. I don't think you're going to have, I hope you don't have the opportunity to develop a clean energy plan in the middle of a pandemic, and in the process of the major sort of upheavals and transitions that occurred during this. But we really appreciate the fortitude and the dedication and the stick-to-itiveness that you all represented in this. So I wanted to make sure that was heard by everyone, and that you, to the degree that you can share that with anybody you know who participated, we really want to make sure that gets out there.
Absolutely. All righty. Well, thank you all. And we're actually ending early. So again,
Robert, I do have one thing. I went back and looked, and I realized I had a second note. And I know, Mike, you said that the Greenway is included for chapter 1, but just iconically, the name, typically people see the Oconee Rivers Greenway, and it's listed as the actual location. I know it's like off of Barnett Shoals. What's it? It's at Belly Street.
oh yeah, that's page 8.
Yeah, the picture from chapter 1, but it doesn't say Oconee. Like, people typically, if someone else picked this up, I mean, or if you were new to Athens, you wouldn't know it was part of the Oconee Rivers Greenway, because that's typically how people refer to it, or they'll say the North Oconee or Middle Oconee, but that's the name of the site, and then it just says Greenway Trail.
So the specific name, North Oconee River Greenway.
Yeah, I think it would be better seen as the Oconee Rivers Greenway Trail, versus the very specific location where it's being taken. And that's just me seeing it. I mean, if the group disagrees, that's okay.
I was just referring to the official name for it as North Oconee River Greenway.
Yeah, okay. And I feel like that's what I would want to put on the picture.
So North Oconee River Greenway.
Yeah, that is what that trail is called.
Yeah.
And which page was that?
Page 8.
8.
And there's the title on page 8.
Good catch. Thanks.
All righty.
Thank you.
Well, y'all been great. If it occurs to you something else, just please pop us a message, give us a call.
And flood
on.
your commissioner's mailbox with support.
Yeah, I mean, we stand by waiting for the commissioner response to us, but if CAB members want to reach out to commissioners and see if they need any, have any questions or need any additional information, that is a prerogative.
Or a good shove. Seems like
They were really great. I mean, they're interested, so that, this is great stuff.
good stuff. Thank you all again.
All right, y'all take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you.